I had 6 weeks of recoup time from the surgery. They give you pain medications, which I never took, and go back for the 6 week checkup. And the hernia doctor, I can't remember his name at the moment, but he was like, how's everything? I'm like, well, everything's good, but I still can't go to the bathroom. He's like, well, it's the pain medications. They constipate you. I'm like, I'm not taking the medications. He's like, oh. So he did a probe, and I couldn't see his face, but turned around, looked at him, and he had this look. He goes, I'm going to send you back to your primary. I felt something. And I was like, oh, boom, right away. I thought it's cancer. I have cancer.
Yep.
And didn't say anything. Of course, doctors, I'm like, just tell me, do you think it's cancer? Well, I don't know. But I'm like, in my head, at this point, I was HIV positive for about 14 years. And after seeing doctors for so many years,
you're just like, tell me.
Yeah,
right?
you know the silences. There's so much more in the silence than there is sometimes in the actual words. So I'm like, okay, fine. So we schedule going back to my primary, who had been my doctor for like 7 years now, knew me very well. I'm like, so he sent me back, goes, okay, well, let's do the probe. So he does the probe, and he has this look too. And I'm like, what's the deal? He's like, well, I'm going to send you to a specialist. And he picks up the phone. And I knew at that point, at the moment that he didn't write a referral. He didn't make a note of it. He called this doctor and said, can you see him? Yeah, you know how that is. It's like, yeah, they don't do all that because it's like, oh, we can wait on this. Like we need to move on this. And I'm mentally getting prepared for this visit. And so he calls the doctor. So my doctor was Dr. Lochner, and the oncologist I'm going to see is Dr. Rad. And at first I thought, like, is that really his name? But it was. It was his name, Dr. Rad, and he lived up to the last name. Let me tell you that.
Awesome.
So I go in. I think it was like 2 days later we had the appointment, and does the probe. There's a whole story to that, but it's not PG, so I'll tell you that in private. And he does the probe, and he says, I feel a mass. I think we need to do a colonoscopy. And this was the second one I'd had in my life, for the first one. Anyway, so for anybody who's had a colonoscopy, you know that that's a torture in itself.
Right.
And so we do the biopsy. This is around May now. So I was supposed to see him on a Friday, and it just happened that it was Cinco de Mayo. And so that was when I was diagnosed. I was diagnosed on Cinco de Mayo. And I joke about it because I do stand up. I tell people, this is how Mexican I am, that I even got diagnosed for cancer on Cinco de Mayo. And so I called him because I was still having problems going to the bathroom. And I was like, hey, if something is going on, I need you to tell me now. So at this point, I'm in Southern California. I live in Laguna Beach. My partner lives in Culver City, and my doctor's in Newport. And for anybody who's familiar with the area. So we're in Culver City, and when I call him, he's like, if you can get here within the hour, I have surgery, but if you can get here within the hour, I can see you and give you your diagnosis. Boom, I knew. I'm like, it's cancer. And I told Christian, my partner, my boyfriend, I'm like, it's cancer. He's like, no, don't put it out there. Don't put that energy out there. I'm like, I'm not. It's already there. I'm like, let's just go.
He wants to see you right away, right? He needed to talk to you, right? Exactly.
And for anybody listening, when they call you right away, it's not to congratulate you that your colon was beautiful. They're not throwing you a surprise party. There's news. And so we get there. And it didn't take him long to just see us because he had to go to surgery. And he's like, you have anal cancer. It's almost stage 2. And I think we can take care of this with chemo and radiation. I don't think we need surgery, but we need to start immediately.
Right away. Right.
And I'm not a big in-person crier. So in private, I'm a baller. I'll cry over anything. But I did start crying a little bit.
It's scary. That's a really scary situation to be in. Yeah.
No matter how macho Mexican I think I am, it's cancer. There's a power in the C word. There's a big power there. And one thing, because I was listening to Yolanda's story, one thing that really made me trust Dr. Rad was that he got up from his chair and he put his hand on my shoulder. And I'm looking down and, pondering what's going to happen. And he says, look at me. And I'm like, I'm okay. I'm okay. And he's like, look at me. And I'm like, I'm fine. We'll deal with this. And he got aggressive and he said, look at me.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at him and he goes, we got this.
It's early. Yeah.
And I was like, because in all my years of going to doctors, it's always like, oh, you're going to be fine. Everything's going to okay. We're going to take care. But he was like, we got this. And at that moment, man, that moment was like, I can trust this guy. Like, I can trust him.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to do the best that he can to make sure that I get out of this the best way possible. So we did 40 rounds of radiation. And then we did 2 weeks of chemo. I had the little pump with the portacath.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the radiation caused some damages. We had fistulas that appeared, so there was some damage. One of the fistulas was right in front of an artery that burst, and I ended up in the emergency room for 8 days, or in the hospital for 8 days. I died and came back. Spoiler alert, I'm still alive, just in case you were wondering. There were diapers that had to be used for a while.
I mean, these treatments are aggressive. How did you like going into this and you kind of, I know from you kind of knew what was going to happen in the meeting. Well, you didn't know exactly, right? But you had like this, premonition, idea, right? Yeah. Premonition of what's going to happen. And so, most of us don't know anything about cancer. That's what I always ask people. Like, it's not like something you spend your Sunday afternoon, like, oh, I'm going to read about cancer today. Like that's not fun. Right. So like, how did you learn, like what your options, like what was going to be like what were these things going to happen? Like, because you have to manage your own care now, right? Like you have to be like really actively involved in this thing.
So there's a couple of sides to this. First of all, being HIV positive, well, not that was part of it, but I've been an HIV advocate, educator. I speak at schools. I had been doing that for about 15 years. So I knew a lot about HIV. And the moment we get that diagnosis, we go home, I'm Googling anal cancer, how, where, when, and come to find out that for me, the perfect storm, this HIV, HPV, and polyps, the anal tears from anal sex, were the perfect storm. I just had the perfect combination for anal sex, which was very irritating to me. And the reason
irritating,
yeah, no pun intended. But the irritation was that as an HIV educator, working with doctors, working with researchers, I had never heard that HIV positive people had a 35% higher percentage of cancers than people with that HIV, with 20 to 25 different cancers. And I was like, how did I never know this? Why was this never part of any presentation that I went, any training that I went to? 14 years of trainings.
Why is that not out there?
Thank you. That is the $25,000 question. Let's go on pyramid, figure this one out. Which I've now included in my trainings when I go to high schools, community colleges, universities in Southern California to educate students on HIV. I now include this in my speeches because I want people to know that HIV can lead to cancers. And sometimes we don't even know. Because you're right, like my family, there was no history of cancers in my family. I always say I'm an overachiever. I was the first one, but we even in and taking cultural references as Latinos, we really don't talk about health issues a whole lot. We talk about them when they happen to somebody else. Tia Maria had cancer, and everybody's talking about it. But when it happens in your home, under your roof, we don't want to talk. Nobody wants to talk about it. Either we don't want the pity, or we don't want anybody to feel sorry for us. And for a moment, I felt that way. For a split second, I felt like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody. I didn't want to be a statistic on HIV. Like I didn't want people to go, oh, well, of course he has anal cancer. Now, HIV positive man, of course that. But on the way home, Christian, my partner, is driving, and I'm texting my sisters. I'm like, hey, where are you? I need to talk to you. Can I call you? And as I'm waiting for the replies, without looking at him, I go, I think I'm going to make a video when I get home.
Mhm.
And I don't even think I say, I think I said, I'm going to make a video when I get home. And he didn't skip a beat. He goes, of course you are. And I did. I did a 30-day diary in my my cancer diagnosis. So you can see the transitions of
Positions.
getting skinny and losing my hair. I call this my cancer hair because this is after cancer. And I'm really vain about my hair. So this is what happens.
It looks good. Looks good,
Thank
man.
you. Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Just for you, sir. Just for you.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of information that was not provided. I had a great doctor, but I think there's things that were not brought up. And you have to take who you are. Like I was listening to Yolanda and where she was. She was a mom, a wife, working athlete. I'm also an actor. I'm a stand-up comic. I do a lot of live stream shows.
Mhm.
I'm a spiritual coach. There's a lot of things that I had to take into consideration. Like, what am I going to be able to do now and what I can't?
Were you afraid you're going to lose that? Like, was that like a thing?
Yeah,
Like, I'm not
I
going to be able
did.
to do that stuff, or was it like, because you're also embracing it? You said right away the first thing you're gonna do is go make a video. Like you're like
Yeah.
embracing it and maybe
And
like
yes,
lose it at the
and then
same time,
no, because
right?
there is a part of you that is like, what if I don't beat it? What? Because okay, for everybody, I know we're not at the point where we're giving like any pointers, but please do not go down the Google rabbit hole. No offense to Google, Google's great, but man, you can find the most horrific stories when it comes to cancer, and you immediately think, is that going to be me?
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't turned 45 yet, and I was like, I had this wonderful relationship. I'm just starting these awesome parts of my career. Like, what's going to happen? And as I started losing weight and losing my hair, and the fistulas popped up, and I was wearing diapers, you
It's a
really
hard
start
time.
to
Yeah.
consider, yeah, there is no way. And then you get chemo brain. Chemo brain is horrible. It's like,
Describe that. That's actually, you're the first person you've talked about. I know about it, right? Right. But you're the first person I've talked to. Can you describe that? Like
yeah.
what's
So, and Micah, if you make me cry, I am hanging up right now. Chemo
don't
brain.
hang up.
So you know, no, I'm not. I'm a ham for attention. I'm not gonna hang
Yeah.
up. But so chemo starts, right? Chemo starts, and you're like, yeah, I got this. And for those of you, there's different types of ways of to get chemo. Some people go daily and get the infusions. Some people have the pump like I did, and they just plug it into your portacat. Some people are now taking pills. There's all kinds. But for me, it was a 24/7, 1 week program. So I went in on Monday, they plugged me in, and you go in Friday and they unplug you. But it stays in your system. So the first week, it's like, oh, this is fine. Like I can handle this. You go in for some nausea medications and you do what you need to. You're like, cool. Then it starts happening. You start smelling things and they just annoy you, things that you were used to. And that's where it starts. Like I couldn't stand the smell of cleaners and bleach and stuff and garlic. Like I was a vampire all of a sudden, couldn't stand garlic. Then things were too bright. And then tasting things, because you start getting that metal taste in your mouth. It's like you have pennies in your mouth all the time. One of the things that I ate during chemo that I can't get the taste back for are oranges. I used to love oranges, and that kind of went away. But then the chemo brace starts kicking in, and all of a sudden you start having dreams, and they're very vivid, and they're nightmarish. For me, I was talking to God. I was talking to dead relatives. Then you think everybody hates you and you think you're a burden. Then your life became like you just feel like your whole life is heavy. And because I was so weak and I couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. I couldn't really eat anymore. I thought that I was just like,
So
treatment's
how
not
did you get
working.
through that? Like, because your whole body, right? Like you're taking these medications that are just changing your entire body, right?
Yeah.
And to your point, they're like with you for like some time. It's not like you take it and then it's like out of your system, right? This
No.
stuff is like working for a long time, and it's supposed to work that way, but it's also their poison, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're poisoning a cancer. So you're also poisoning yourself at the same time. And
you
so,
have to break down the Jenga game before you can build it back up again. And you're just, if anybody's ever played Jenga, you're just moving one block at a time, and that's what you're doing with your treatment. You're moving one block at a time, and you're just expecting it to collapse. But your body needs to do that in order to get better. The last thing I'll tell you is, and I'll tell you this quick story. There was one night when I was so frustrated because I had the fistulas. And for everybody who doesn't know fistula, it's just basically another hole in your butt, and things come out of there. And food was not kicking right, so there was a lot of diarrhea, and I had to take showers. Like basically, I think I was on my 7th shower that day, and I was just tired. My body was exhausted. You're mentally, physically, and spiritually exhausted. And I was about to go to bed, and Christian says, I think you need to take a shower before you go to bed. And that was the cue for, we need to go rinse and cleanse and clean you. And I got in the shower, I got out, and I was so mad and so frustrated, so just wasted, that I started crying. And I looked at him, I go, I want you to just put a pillow over my head, and I want you to kill me. And he was like, I can't do that. I'm like, I'll make a video. I'll tell them I told you to. I'll write a letter. Just do it. I don't want to wake up tomorrow. And it was
no. I'm so sorry, Daniel. Yeah.
It was agonizing. And just, I just didn't want to be me anymore. And of course, it didn't happen at one point.
But you did it. You're here. You're telling me the story. Yes, right?
At one point, he was just like, okay, shut up. Here's your pain pills. Go to bed. I'm like, I don't want to wake up. And he's like, I'll see you in the morning. Fine. And chemo.
Sounds like you had really strong support. You had a lot of strong support.
I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed, and I'm very spoiled by God and the universe. They have put some amazing people in my life. But unofficial, and it's not scientific. Most of my friends who have been through cancer, we've determined that it's about a 10-year mark for your chemo brain to come back to some normalcy. It lingers for a while because I still have memory loss. If at the end of the day I'm too exhausted, I start to stutter or I can't remember words. So it does happen for a while. But you learn. I had to learn. I mean, I fought through AIDS. I fought through drug addiction and alcoholism. Cancer. Okay, so long story. When I was diagnosed with AIDS, HIV in 2000, I was like, okay, if you're going to be in my body forever, you're paying rent. I'm making a career. And that's why I went into advocacy and teaching. And the same thing with cancer. I'm like, okay, fine. Because I have an ostomy as well. The damages in my from the fistulas,
from the radiation,
when the radiation were too big, and basically the tumor, the cancer was on my sphincter. It was half of it. So when the radiation got rid of the cancer, it also took half of my sphincter. And the doctor was like, either you live with diapers for the rest of your life, which I always said it gave me a great butt. It does great for the butt, but you get an ostomy. So I have an ostomy. His name's Tommy. And here I had my surgery on April Fool's Day, April 1st, 2016 was my ostomy surgery. They rolled me into the operating room. I'm like, please tell me somebody's going to jump on and say, punked, you don't need surgery. But no, they did. I did have it. But the same thing with the ostomy and the cancer. I'm like, you're a part of my life now. You're going to pay rent. We're going to use you. So my partner and I have both collaborated or consulted or participated in cancer research, both for the patient and the caregiver, because the caregiver is very important in those cases.
I know.
And I continue with my HIV advocacy, and now I've included cancer. I talk about it.
Well, I love that, Daniel. I love the fact you're an educator about this, because it's like learning and sharing this information. And we have all this incredible technology that we mostly use for like marketing stuff to each other, right? but we can use all this technology and information for learning from each other. Right. Yeah. And that's what you're giving back. Like you and your partner are giving back, and you're taking your experience, and you say paying rent. And I think, no, you guys are just amplifying, right, the experience, because that's all we have, right? Like we all experience, like every day is an experience, right? So, and it struck me so much what you said in the beginning, which is like, there's this increased risk. And I'm like, I never knew that. Right. And every time I hear something like that, I'm like, I never knew that. I never knew that. I never knew it. And so this is like continuous learning, right? And we have to start doing this. It's the only way that any of us are going to solve any of these complex problems, right? If you look at what's happening, because it's a little bit cliche that it takes a village, but it takes all of us kind of putting our collective experience together and finding ways to learn from it to address like these issues. So, exactly. I mean, you're so inspiring. Like,
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But it's there's a positive side to going down a rabbit hole, because the further you go, the more you learn. And then as a Latino, I realized how 20 years ago, or 21 years ago, when I was diagnosed with HIV, AIDS, there was so little information for the Hispanic community in Spanish. And I got educated, I learned so I could teach my family. Well, then cancer comes around, and I realized that there was this general mold for how cancer was treated, for how post-cancer was treated, not taking into consideration the cultural, religious, and social norms of the person who's being diagnosed. Because even though I was raised in the States and I'm very Americanized, there's a lot of cultural things that I held back, that I believe in. There's religious things that I needed to have faith in to get better. And the way that the hierarchy worked in my family, it's still very real. And part of what I want to do when I speak is to let other Latinos know that anal cancer is not something to be ashamed of. You don't go out and buy it and say, I'm going to try this on for size. We need to talk about it. I know it sounds funny, but and that's another thing that I've done with my advocacy is bring a little bit of comedy to
humor.
It.
Yeah.
Because I've realized over my years in entertainment that people retain more information when they laugh with you than when you just stress them out, and they'll retain more. My first stand-up gig when I graduated from the school that I went to was my first oncology visit. I tell the story, and I'll tell you offline, but I tell the story of going to my doctor for the first time, and people were cracking up about it. But there's still a whole lot to do. We still have more to do. And that's why when this invitation came up, I was like, I'm there. Let other Latinos know that there is a group of us out there, and we are willing to talk to you, and we will share happily with you all the information that we've gathered. A lot of things are secret in the cancer world, and we need to get those out of there.
They're not secret. They just need to get out. We need a voice. So thank you, Daniel. I really, man, you are giving back so much. So thank you. And to you and to Christian, right? Your partner. And yes, you guys, you rock. So thank you. And thank you for the humor. This has been it's been a joy talking to you. It's truly
my pleasure. Anytime. Let me know.
Yeah. Thank you. I will. We'll do it. And I'm going to have to check out your show now. I'm going to go check out your stand-up. I gotta see it. So
check out my YouTube. Everything's on there.
I will. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for coming on.
Sir. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.